we go. God, I love that song, Cinema. What a great album. Produced by Trevor Horn, who is our virtual guest in a way, Steve, I guess you could say.
Yeah, today is Trevor Horn's birthday, and even though we don't have him on the show, we want to talk about his autobiography. It's also Peter Banks's birthday, but we talked about a bit of his work with Yes the other day on our second anniversary show with that Something's Coming Beyond and Before album. So happy birthday to Peter Banks. Happy Heavenly Birthday again. But also, yeah, the Trevor Horn. Also, I'm Steven. This is Dan, my dad. We're Yesshift. I don't remember if we said that.
I didn't.
Um,
Sorry.
but yeah, we wanted to talk about this autobiography, which we got toward the end of last year. But
Was it that long ago?
yeah, and we've just been so busy. But
Oh my
then
God.
at some point, we were like, you know what? Let's talk about it for Trevor Horn's birthday. We'll have it all read by
Yeah.
then, and we have. So, yeah, very excited to talk about this finally.
Yeah, and we want to let you know there will be spoilers, but we're going to save those for like the last 5 or 10 minutes. There are some spoilers, and we'll give you a heads up.
Oh
Um,
wow, only 5 or 10 minutes.
well, for 10 minutes. I think we can get
Okay.
them out of the way in that
Yeah,
amount of time.
because there's some things I jotted down, and I'm not sure if they're spoilers or not. But I guess we're gonna feel that out as we go along.
Yeah, yeah, and they're all yes related that he talks about in the book. Um, I I'm pretty well read when it comes to the Yes universe. I'm pretty well viewed as far as all their DVD stuff and interviews and blah blah blah. But there were some things I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe. So we're gonna save those for last in case you want to be surprised. We highly recommend the book. We don't have an affiliate program with the publisher or anything. It's 9 books, right, Steve?
9, 8 books. Yeah.
Nine, or is it 98 or
No, it's
nine?
just 9, 8 books. It's the word nine, the word eight, and the word books.
As in consuming by eating, or
No,
the numeral spelled out?
it's like the number eight, but spelled out. So,
We want to thank them. It's a great book. We highly recommend if you like biographies, if you like reading books about people you follow in the arts and music, this is a must. Before we launch into our review, I want to mention, every time I read one of these or listen to you having recorded it for me because it's just easier than me reading,
right.
and I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
cuz the official audiobook is region locked. Like it's not available for the US. I'd love to hear the version with Trevor Horn reading, but
Yeah.
we've bought the book, the autographed copies in fact. So I record myself reading it so you could listen to it. And again, it's only available between us. We're not like selling it or
Right.
whatever, obviously. So
Right. But
yeah,
but what I
but
was
go
gonna
on.
say is every time I read a biography or listen to one, I think to myself, I hope I don't sound like an idiot saying this, but I think to myself, how did they remember all that stuff? Like there's some pretty what I would consider finite details. And I think back to all my years in being in bands, and I started as a professionally paid musician when I was 15. I went on tour for the first time. I do not remember every detail about that tour, let alone every date. It was from LA to Long Island, back a different way. I went the next year as well, and then all the bands I was in. Like, how do they remember all this stuff? I don't think everyone journals everything. I don't know. I journaled for a couple of years at one point, as you know. Um, but I don't know. That always fascinates me. Like, it makes me worry about my memory when I read someone else's great memory. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned that to me, I thought to myself, should I just jot down every happy memory I've had, like just in case? Like, I don't know.
It's just weird. Anyhow, I want to throw the first thing out here when he
Okay.
mentioned that he was good friends with Lol Cream. And that hit me like, whoa, how serendipitous and coincidental is that because August
Yeah,
9th,
and Kevin Godley as well, and we're having Kevin Godley on the show August 9th.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Coincidentally, we're having him on the 9th from Godly and Cream, and who also Kevin did the video of Leave It, and then the sample of Chris's voice from that song that was used later, and so just some neat crossover universe stuff. But why don't you go ahead with a couple points, and I'll cruise through some things, and then we'll save yes spoilers for last.
Right. Well, I don't think it's a spoiler to ask this question, but something that I saw someone ask about was like how much yes coverage is there in this book, because that might be the main draw for them. And I was wondering, like, do you think that in general yes fans would enjoy this book that
Yes.
covers basically Trevor's production career, or do you think because yes is kind of confined to just a couple of chapters, they might not enjoy it as much?
Honestly, I think it's worth getting, even if you just read those two chapters. I really do. And again, we don't get anything for this. As a Yes fan since 1971, as someone who totally loved drama and 90125, and those are both touched on, um, I highly recommend it. I think it's more about the nuggets that you probably won't know. Like I said, there were a lot of things I heard for the first time or read virtually through Steve's recording, and I think it's worth it just for that. I would have paid if someone said, "Hey, I got some notes from the book that just covers the yes stuff, but in respect for the publisher, I got to charge you the full price." I'd have paid it. Seriously, and I can tell you now that it's worth it.
Yeah,
What do you
because I
think?
think it begins, with his early life and getting into music, and then
Which I
you
found
get,
fascinating, by the way.
yeah, like you get to know his musical tastes. Like he was really into Pink Floyd, and like set the controls for the Heart of the Sun. He says made him feel like he was high, even though he wasn't like using anything then. Um, and yeah, like there's a bit of the drama period, and the 90125 chapter is about halfway through. And I feel like if anyone were to start reading from the beginning, like by the time they get to the end of the 90125 chapter, they'd definitely want to continue reading. I think it would be bizarre if anyone,
Just
like,
stopped there.
yeah, like if even if
That's
you're
true.
mainly there for the yes stuff, like just got to the end of that chapter and we're
But
like, okay, I don't want to read the rest. Like it's
but
so well written.
yeah, but you know what else is important is that everything before that gives great context to the drama and the 90125 stuff. And that's very important to have that context to know his musical upbringings and what he was into and the work he was doing with Jeff before then and even before that. It gives great context. It's almost kind of, I don't want to insult anybody. It's almost kind of dumb to just read those two chapters and not have the full context of what led up to that. Um, uh, this is not a spoiler. I should have asked you this offline. Maybe it is. Never mind. I'm going to leave it.
Leave it. Yeah, but I would say that each chapter, like, it would be kind of weird reading those yes chapters like in isolation, because I feel like every chapter kind of builds upon
Yeah.
the stuff that came before,
Yeah, it's a
bringing up
biography.
some, yeah, like bringing up some stuff about the other artists he's worked with and those different experiences. It
And
very
then
much
what he
feels like a
did
progression.
and what he did with those yes experiences afterwards. So you got to read the whole thing. But you do what you want and it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I think this would also appeal very much to people who either are really into the hits that he helped make and
Oh,
produce, or
that blew my
people,
mind.
yeah, or people who are just fascinated by production in general. You
Yeah.
get the story of how this guy with glasses, he talks about how the glasses became part of his identity. Um, and like really, to me, it never occurred to me that like people like when he was growing up might not have sort of picked on him a little because of the glasses. I just always thought Trevor Horn was a cool guy, and he is. So it was kind of bizarre reading that, you know. Um, but yeah, like just seeing growing up and how he got into music and how he worked on producing all sorts of things that became so successful. I think it's a very gripping story. Like even
Yeah.
if you're only into the production side of things,
Yeah.
like you definitely love this book.
Especially again the context of time back when most of it that's discussed is from the era of 2-inch tape machines the size of wash machines, you know,
Yeah.
and not how things are done today on a laptop or a PC with Pro Tools, Cakewalk, you know, all those programs. So it's worth it for that. But what's a couple? What are? Can you name some surprising things outside of the yes spoilers that we'll discuss later, that you didn't know about him or his work? Because there were more for me than I was comfortable with. Meaning, I was kind of embarrassed. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know he worked with Foreigner. Oh my gosh, I didn't know he worked with Simple Minds. Oh my gosh, I didn't know he this, that, and the other thing. There were a bunch of things that were like, what?
Yeah, I was actually surprised to learn. You know, I consider myself a Buggles fan. You know, I saw Trevor do the Buggles set last month. I got the keychain as I showed before.
Yeah,
But I was kind of surprised to learn that Bruce Woolley uh, made his own version of Video Killed the
me too.
Radio Star,
Yeah,
and listening to it, and it's very much a big band version, and it does sound pretty good, but it still feels like an alternate universe. And I
it
think,
is.
yeah, I think the book even mentioned that it came out slightly before the Buggles version, but of course,
Right. Like
the
literally
Buggles,
days or a couple weeks, I think.
yeah, and how at that time, like even the song "Video Killed the Radio Star," like the title of it, they were kind of concerned because there was
The
an album
band.
called "Video King" by Snips, and also the band Radio Stars.
Right.
And Trevor Horn basically said at the time, by the time we get this song out, they'll be history, and
Right.
like he knew.
Yeah, he
Um,
was right.
yeah.
Um so what's another surprising fact for you, and then I'll throw some of mine out.
Another was Ian McShane being a Yes fan, you know, the actor who did the narration for the song Slave to the Rhythm. Um, should we also talk about like the structure, like this goes up to 2004? Like, should I talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, so the structure of the book, like each chapter is named after a song that has a lot of meaning to Trevor. Like the first couple are like songs that he listened to, but as it progresses, it's like songs that he worked on. And he made the very conscious choice to only cover his career up to 2004 because, you know, beyond that point, there's the unfortunate family tragedy with his wife, Jill Sinclair. Jill has a huge presence in this book. You see just
Oh, yeah.
how pivotal she was in helping him make certain decisions and getting certain people signed on.
Absolutely.
But also 2004 was when the Prince's Trust concert honoring Trevor Horn happened, and it had that weird Yes lineup, which we might talk about later. And so that seemed like a very nice capstone event to go up to. Um,
Weird yes lineup. Sorry, that just sounds funny.
yeah, and the introduction for this book starts with that event before we go back in time, and then it comes back to
Yeah.
that event at the end. And that's actually a technique that was sort of you know, the literary journalism classes I took in college touched upon that. Like whenever we were told to write a story after interviewing someone, we'd have to pick an event that's like maybe somewhere in the middle of the chronology of the story, like something exciting to begin with,
Kind
put
of
it at the
bookend it.
front, and then tell the story from the beginning because it's more exciting that way, like starting in media res. And Steve Howe's autobiography did that too. I know you haven't read it, but I have. It begins with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame
Mm,
stuff, which was like all over the place, and it's very smart to begin with that
yeah.
event and then go back in time because the early life stuff is so unfamiliar to
Right.
the fans that they might you got to start with some big event that
Suck
they
them
probably
in
already
first.
know.
Yeah.
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 um so I totally understand why Trevor Horn structured it this way, and I think it really works.
Yeah. It's great. There's a few. Here's some. I had no idea things. I'm looking at my made a few notes. So if I don't remember if I have the gentleman's name correct, but I think his name was Paul Johnson. Trevor, I hope I'm not messing up his name. The first drummer who did the demo of Video Killed the Radio Star, and to find out that that guy had played with Nina Simone. And if I remember correctly, in that same chapter, unrelated, Trevor mentioned Singapore. And the funny thing about that is the last time Anja, my wife and I, Anja, last time we were in Singapore, we went to this little area that we had never been the other times called Arab Town. And Arab Town's a really, really cool suburb with all these really great shops and cafes and things. And they're all like roll up doors. So as you just walk right in, they're all open air. And we went in and sat down and had some sort of neat dessert and a beer or something like that. And on the wall was this huge mural of Nina Simone with primary colors. And for those who don't know, Nina Simone was born in 1933. I think she passed in 2001, 2004, 2003, something like that. And she was an American jazz singer who, like Josephine Baker, another black American jazz singer, ended up moving to France. And that's where she passed away. So I just thought that weird
Mm.
little collection of facts that clustered together was really interesting. One of the things I always love discovering is different sayings different cultures have in the same language, the English language. And my favorite one from this book is when he's talking about Jim Steinman, who had uh, written or produced, I think written songs like Bat Out of Hell, Total Eclipse of the Heart, and many other working class trailer trash anthems. I just thought that was so funny in Trevor's words. And the other thing, when someone kind of made a narcissistic statement at like the worst possible time, he said, Trevor says, talk about polishing the face while the roof is caving in. I thought that was so funny. So little things like that I get a kick out of. The Ian McShane thing was a big surprise. When I heard that part on the recording, I ran out of the room and I told Enja, because we're
Yeah.
huge Ian McShane fans and she's a huge Grace Slick fan. And I said, hey, you know that song? I said, that voice is Ian McShane. And I told the story and I won't spoil the whole story, but that was really cool. Paul McCartney coming up behind Trevor at the studio while he was playing Space Invaders. And then Paul shows him how to rig the machine so he has the highest score. That was just hilarious.
Yeah. And
Um,
that really came full circle because when Trevor talks about his early life, people of that generation were like, oh, yeah, I love the Beatles.
I
And
want to
it,
become a musician because I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. Yeah.
yeah, like I think it took him a bit to get into them, but yeah, and eventually working with Paul McCartney, and it's just like, what a life.
Yeah.
And also with the likes of Rod Stewart, David Bowie. He talked about how he appreciated how honest Rod Stewart's manager
Yeah,
was, I
that was
believe.
great. I loved that.
Yeah, because when it comes to musicians, it's good to have people who support you, but you also got to make sure you're not surrounded just by yes men, pun
No pun
intended.
okay.
Like you got to have people who give their honest opinions of like, okay,
Yeah.
you got to do this to do it a bit better, that type of thing.
Yeah. And in this case, I don't think this spoiler we can. Rod was complaining about his voice, and the manager gave it a listen, and the manager easily could have thrown the engineer under the bus, but instead he told Rod, he said, "It's your voice. You're not singing that well right there." And that's the kind of manager everybody needs. That's the kind of life partner everybody needs. That's the kind of business partner or team member everybody needs. I hope with Drum Talk TV, and it's happened, someone will speak up if I'm out of line or just not doing something right or blaming something on the wrong thing. I mean, I can maybe think of one instance. We've done pretty well in 10.5 years, but my point is, like Steve says, we all need to surround ourselves with the right people, and that's part of it. Not someone that's gonna hold your hand, nod, shake their head, and nod and smile and walk you to the cliff and let you fall off. You need someone that's gonna kick you down the stairs, get down there to help you up, but punch you in the chin before they do.
Yeah, and since you mentioned Drum Talk TV, when I was reading the introduction, when he begins to talk about the 2004 Princess Trust concert and how stressful it is, like getting everything together, it really reminded me of like the Drum Talk TV 10th anniversary event. And it's like, even though it's a different scale, there's still those pressures.
Oh
So it was
God.
kind of comparable in a way.
Yeah. Thanks for even thinking of that, even though you're probably only aware of 20% of it. And folks, just so you know,
Right.
the reason why is that's the only Drum Talk TV thing that Steve's been part of or that happened while Steve's been with the company, which is 6 years now, I guess. But that he didn't have to do anything. He just came and enjoyed the show, other than giving the audio video guys certain codes to get into our stuff for the live
Right.
stream. Other than that, so for you to even recognize that just from what you saw, I guess from rehearsal day and the day of the show, and me probably just freaking out for 2 months. It took us 9 months to put that thing together, but the 2 months leading up to it, there was just more and more and more and more detail. And I got to tell you, without Jerice, our amazing event planner, without McKenna, my assistant, just helping me keep everything together, I never could have done that. So
Right.
that's interesting. Thanks for even recognizing that.
Yeah, and I also got kind of nostalgic when in the book, Trevor talks about sort of living at a place that had like this basement, and there would be roommates who wouldn't talk to each other that much. It kind of
Yeah.
got me nostalgic for during college when
Oh, I thought you were
certain
gonna say living
roommates
at home.
like
No,
certain roommates just wouldn't talk to each other very much. Like I
that's
don't know
weird.
why I was so nostalgic about that, but I just was.
Was that more in England or more when you were at Irvine?
In Irvine, like first couple years, I guess you could say.
Okay. Oh, okay. I didn't hear that. Um, Another thing was I thought it was funny when they played the first. Well, first of all, because this is tied to Art of Noise, um, I had no idea he was in that. Art of Noise was his band. I had no idea, and the reason why is because through that era of music, I was in a very snobby progressive rock band, and I didn't listen to anything like Duran Duran or anything that came out in that vein. No new wave, no techno. So I had no idea. My horizons are much like as broad as possible as far as musical genres as I've gotten older. But it was funny when he described playing the first Coachella concert, and the saxophone he was going to use for one of the songs, a plastic saxophone, literally melted and deformed from the
Yeah.
heat. So they had to X that song out of the show. That was just like, oh, and I know what Coachella's like. You're closer to it right now than I am. Coachella, just so y'all know, is sort of near Palm Springs ish, right? It's like in that area, Palm Desert, Palm Springs. It's over there, and it is hot. So that was cool. I didn't know he worked with Grace Jones. That blew my mind in the Grace Jones stories. And so when I walked out and told Anja, I'm pointing because her office is around the corner, and I said, "Hey, the beginning of that song? That's Ian McShane." And then she says, "I have a Grace Jones story for you when you're ready." I said, "Okay, tell me now," because Anja, who knows what's in her past, right? She's got all kinds of crazy stories.
Right.
She says, "I dated a guy who dated Grace Jones before me, and my wife is black. For those of you who don't know, I don't know if there's any correlation there, but what happened was he said that they were living together for a while, and he went home and she was in bed with another woman, and he said what really got him the most is that they didn't even stop. They didn't even like, oh, we're busted. They just kept on going, and he just left, and that was the end of it. And he
Oh
said that's
wow.
what hurt the most. Um, really
Yeah.
great book. What are some of your other favorite anecdotes that you got out of it, or things about production or things like that that you learned or you talked
Yeah,
about?
well, real quick, I see Brian Cahoon commented technician recognition. Yeah,
Whoa,
definitely.
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta recognize the people who work on the production. I loved how detailed it was whenever he would
Yeah.
talk about, I would move this, I'd use this machine, and uh, I would try going back to the demo to see how it sounded and what drew me in the first time. And sometimes he would use older music as inspiration for what to do with newer stuff, using samples and remixing and stuff like that.
He seems to be a lifelong study of the craft as he's going
Yeah.
through it, like just really deep. Um,
Yeah. Also,
yeah, go
the
ahead.
DreamWorks movie Spirit, the one about the horse from the early 2000s. I watched that movie as a kid, like probably in the theater, and I remember enjoying it. But reading that Trevor Horn was fired from that movie, I was like, "Whoa, what happened there?" And
Yeah,
I kind of want to hear that story,
that whole story. Yeah.
but he mainly focused on Coyote Ugly in that chapter, which sounded like an interesting film. The way that he described it and helping them work on like miming the keyboard and so I got around to watching that movie and I thought it was fine. Like I was interested in the songwriting aspect, but there were some other things in it that I was like, oh, I guess this is part of the movie too. But there are some genuinely heartwarming moments in it, so
Yeah.
people might like it.
Yeah, shout out to Lee John Killingsworth, a friend of mine who's in that movie
Oh,
because
really?
he's one of the founders. He's the chief marketing officer. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He lived in Ojai, above where we lived in Ventura, and he recently moved to Florida. So, yeah, cool guy, cool movie.
Yeah, and Trevor also says that performing with Seal on stage felt so natural when it finally happened, and I could definitely see that when I saw them perform together
That's
here
cool.
in LA last month. Like there's definitely a kinship there.
Yeah, that's super cool. I also wanted to mention, let me look at my notes here. Oh, I can relate to this. Like even now with Drum Talk TV, what we're doing, my marketing company, the fact that my wife and I live in a very small mountain town, as I mentioned, it's Globe, Arizona. Let us know where you're watching from, by the way, folks. Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix, very small town, and I work from here. My studio's here. My office that I'm in is here. So when he mentioned about going out and performing again for the first time in 20 years since the Yes thing, he said he had become a golem like creature living in
Yeah.
the studios, not wanting to see the sunlight and being, pretty much away from a normal human contact. I thought that was hilarious. I mean, my
Yeah.
room, this is the third place we've lived. I don't even have a window in this room.
Oh yeah, I've never noticed that about
Yeah.
that room. That
And
is
it's not a
weird.
basement. This room is an interior room surrounded by other rooms. Enge's big gallery is out there. Then there's a hall on this side of the wall that leads down to the gym. And behind me is another part of like her office. Yeah. So it's like no windows. And that's probably good because if we ever build a house like we want to on a ranch with windows, I'll probably get no work done. I'll probably just always be staring out the window at the birdies or something.
Mm. Yeah. I also thought it was funny. One of his kids pronounced Pet Shop Boys Ketchup
Ketchup boy.
Boys.
It reminded me, I mean, every parent, I'm sure, did what I did. It reminded me of the funny things that you and your brother and sisters used to pronounce differently.
Oh
I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
Alex used,
We don't need to mention the one of those.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
The one of
um,
Alex's?
yeah. Like I don't want to embarrass him or
Oh,
anything.
okay.
Yeah, but yeah. Also, I remember one of these bands that he talks about that he worked with. He was talking about how it was kind of difficult to get them all to work
Yeah.
together, like trying to bring out the best of everyone at one point, and that kind of reminded me of the latter sessions, how Bruce Fairbairn was able to get everyone to like,
On the same page,
yeah, and on the same
even
page,
though that
give it
music
their
wasn't
all,
from the page.
collaborate. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a big part of the producer. I think that band was Simple Minds. I think it was that chapter.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
and interesting that he said, so if you could get any dream drummer, who would it be? And they said Stuart Copeland. The next day, Stuart got on a plane, flew out to Scotland, and had a conversation with the band. And then he didn't even play. He recommended Manu Katché, who is on my favorite Tears for Fears song, which is um, Bad Man song from the Sowing the Seeds of Love album. An amazing drum work on there, amazing drum work, and tons of stuff with Peter Gabriel as well from the So album. I think he played on So and um, the album. No, it was just So. I don't think he's on Us. Anyhow, great drummer, but it was interesting to me that Stewart flew all the way out there just to have a conversation with them to recommend somebody else.
yeah, and I don't think we've mentioned this, but there are also some nice photos in the
Yeah,
middle of this book. They're really good. You see Trevor through the years. You see him with his wife as well. So yeah, very worth it to get the physical book.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm just like scrolling through my notes.
And Dave Watkins is chiming in from England about 6:30 p.m.
Oh yeah, watching
Eight
from
thirty. Sorry,
Sussex.
8:30 p.m. What am I saying?
Okay, hi Dave.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for chiming in.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just like scrolling through my notes, seeing what else I have
Yeah, I'll
here.
take a look too while you're doing that.
Yeah, I see a few things that have to do with yes, I guess we're saving.
Yeah, we'll save those just in case people consider them spoilers.
Yeah.
Dave
Oh, I
says,
remember. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Dave says his favorite work by Trevor is 90125, Pleasure Dome, Buggles, Dollar.
Oh yeah, there's a chapter on dollar.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
wait. This reminds me. Going back to what you were saying about the book, the fans' question that asks you, is it worth it? Is how much yes cover. Here's the other thing. You'll learn about bands you may not be familiar with, which is always great to take a deep dive into, especially if someone you admire had anything to do with them or also admires them. So, like, there's a bunch of bands that were mentioned. Dollars, one of them. Now I want to go listen to that. Now I want to go hear what he did with Grace Jones all over again, knowing that he did that. Stuff like that.
yeah, and propaganda, like
Yeah,
and
that
the
German
Band
band,
Aid thing. Do they know it's Christmas?
right?
There's a chapter on that, but yeah, like all of these, like looking at all these songs and how he talks about them, it made me want to actually listen to them, which I did, and you really get to see like the effect that, like, I guess the breadth of his portfolio,
Right.
you
Is
could say. And
amazing.
yeah, and of course one of the bands is ABC, which of course accounts for the subtitle from ABC to, so I actually don't remember if we said the title out loud. It's
Oh,
on
I
our
don't think we
player,
did.
but yeah, Trevor Horn, Adventures in Modern Recording from ABC to ZTT, or ZTT if you're in England, I guess. Because ABC is one of the bands that he produced, and ZTT Records was, of course, his label. So I think that's a very clever
Yeah.
title, you know?
Another little neat anecdote: him buying a recording studio from David Gilmour in 1995.
Yeah.
That was
And
cool.
and also one of the singles that he worked on, I remember he mentioned it was very gratifying when he saw people in the streets like
Yeah.
dancing to it or playing it, and he wasn't sure if people would believe him there if he said he helped make it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of humility in there as well. So you want to move on to the yes stuff and give the spoiler alert disclaimer again?
Um, well, one more thing before we
Okay.
get into the yes stuff is that from this book, I get the impression that Trevor was always pushing for new sounds. Like, even if it was an artist that is known for a certain sound, it felt like he was trying to see what new stuff he could do. And at one point, I vaguely remember he makes a point of saying he's not trying to inject like his own sound into
Right.
everything, which in hindsight is kind of funny when you take Fly From Here into account, but I guess that's kind of a different thing in a
Yeah, because that
way.
was
But
kind of his baby to begin with in 1980. So
right, yeah, I guess that was kind of like trying to get something finished. And of course, there's a different version. We've talked about the
yeah,
different versions and whatnot, but yeah, that was just one last thing before going into the yes spoilers, I
yeah.
guess.
And I did think of one other thing also, and it is oh, did I just forget it? Uh, yeah, I did. Oh well.
Was
Okay, let's.
it something to do with production or?
It was I really don't remember. It's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
Forget I
we
said
can
that.
move on then. Like
Yeah,
there's
let's
a
move on.
bunch of things that I'm sure like after this broadcast I'll be like, "Oh man, I forgot to mention
Right.
this." But I think that's a testament to how
How
many
much is in
nuggets
there?
this book is full of.
Oh yeah, it's great, full of really neat twists and turns. Okay, so spoiler alert: if you're going to buy the book and you want to be surprised by reading through the yes chapters, then maybe you want to tune out, or we won't go into too much detail. So maybe you want the teasers that we're going to get that could be considered spoilers. Got it, folks? Cool. All right. Uh, so what's your first?
So first, I guess Tempest Fugit is the name of the chapter about the drama period. And I think we were both surprised that it doesn't actually go into the making of that particular song, let alone the crafting of all the songs on that album. It mainly focuses on how he was recruited into the band and how for a couple weeks he kept asking when are John and Rick coming in
Right.
until they finally told him and Jeff that oh they're not coming and that they're replacing them.
You're in the band, yeah.
And like that chapter mostly focuses on the pressures of being the new lead singer. It talks about the touring. There's a good chunk on the touring.
Yeah.
And you gotta remember this was like replacing John Anderson as the lead singer, and yes, it had never been done before. So there was a lot of pressure on Trevor. You know, with Benoit David and John Davison, it's like I'm sure there were some pressures, but it had been done before with Trevor Horn. And also, it was more nerve wracking because Trevor Horn was not used to playing live, whereas
Right.
was comfortable playing with a Yes tribute band. And of course, he's also a mystery. John Davison had, of course, performed in a couple bands before Yes, one of them also a Yes tribute band. So they had experience with that, whereas Trevor Horn was kind of being pushed into the deep end, so to speak, you know?
Plus, they were playing 15, 20,000 seat arenas on 44 to 60 dates tours. So there's that. And my biggest surprise was like that I would like to know a little bit more about when we interview him. And that is,
Yeah, hopefully someday. Yeah.
yeah, they were rehearsing in Philadelphia right up to the start of the tour. And he said every rehearsal there was something that would go wrong. Someone would I'm paraphrasing, but someone would goof or all the way up to the first date of the tour. So he said sometimes my confidence was high, sometimes I'd be totally bricking it. So I want to know, well, what was it the same thing consistently? Was it always him? Was it was it always something different? Made it sound like something different, but was it musically? Was it with the sound? I want to know more about I want a whole chapter just on that, you know.
Yeah, and I remember I don't remember if this was for just one of these periods or for both drama and 90125, but Chris Squire being late, you know, we joke about him being late, but you could see that it would frustrate Trevor Horn very much, and understandably so, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember what I was going to say. The
Okay.
part where they're rehearsing for the tour, and he says, "Who talks between songs?" And they all look at him and they say, "The lead singer." And he says, "But I'm the lead singer." And they say, "Good going, Trev." Like he figured it out. Like, and back then, for time context, 1980, typically it was always the lead singer. Nowadays, you know, we've seen Carl Palmer talk between songs. We've seen
Yeah.
even Rick Wakeman, Steve Howe talk between songs, things like
Yeah.
that.
Chris Squire
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, so it was funny reading that, and it's like, wait, this feels weird that he's having this question back then, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But he hadn't
yeah,
played live, really. I mean,
right.
well, he had, but
Yeah, and I mean the Buggles themselves didn't play live until the tour that, well, the 2004 concert, and then the tour that I saw, where it was mainly Trevor Horn and Seal's backing band. So it's pretty wild to think about. Like the Buggles was pretty much kind of like a studio band,
yeah.
and you also like get a feel of like what Jeff's personality was like when Trevor met him. Trevor says that Jeff was, when they were auditioning keyboardists for, I think it was the Tina Charles band, some of the keyboardists came on strong. Like, I guess in my head, it sounded like they were trying too hard or trying to like talk themselves up.
Keyboard
But
players can
Jeff,
be very
but
heady.
yeah, but Jeff wasn't like that. He felt very natural and organic.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised that Trevor Horn had to finish the second Buggles album, Adventures in Modern Recording, on his own after Jeff left for Asia.
Yeah, and didn't tell him.
Right?
That's a spoiler. But I'll leave the rest of
Yeah.
that story, for people to read it. Um,
So, was there anything else about the
yeah,
drama period you want to bring up, or
not
go
drama,
into?
but 90125 for sure.
Okay, yeah, I feel like 90125, the chapter on that is where all the drama is.
Oh my God, that chapter was gripping and so
Yeah.
revealing. And the biggest thing, and this kind of encapsulates that chapter, is the fact that the guys hated Owner of a Lonely Heart while they were working on it. And that blew my mind. And he kept saying, "You trust me, you have a number one single here, you have a number one single here." And then you think back to what we've heard Rick Wakeman say over and over and over. If it wasn't for 90125 and Owner of a Lonely Heart, there'd have been no Yes forward. And I think he's right. I don't
Mm,
think that after XYZ anything would have happened and it would have ended up being, I anything Yes related. I think that would have
yeah.
been drama would have been the last album.
Yeah. Well, my take is that maybe they would have tried reuniting in the mid 90s at the earliest with the classic lineup, but 90125 accelerated the reunion. They had success with it. And this is kind of a question I had for you. If they had, well, so the chapter is kind of, Trevor kind of uses the names Yes and Cinema interchangeably. So it kind of gets
Right.
confusing. Like, when did the name change happen? Was it before or after he heard the Owner of a Lonely Heart demo, that type of thing? But
My understanding is it's when John joined.
right, but I guess my question is, when did the Owner of a Lonely Heart demo listening happen? But well, yeah, but anyway, so we know Owner of a Lonely Heart became a success. So if they had found a way for that to be a hit single, like with or without John, and but still with the name Cinema, do you think Cinema would have been successful and made a name for itself?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's very, very possible the song could have done just as well if it wasn't John's voice. And
Okay.
that's, I don't want people to fucking fly off the handle and rip me because it sounds like I'm putting John down, because I'm not. I'm giving credit to the song and the production, and that's what made the song work more than John's voice. I mean, let's be honest. And
Mm.
because of that, I think it would have catapulted whoever was there if that's how it sounded. And have you heard the demo version?
Yeah, and it may have been, you may have heard it as well, like forever ago. Like it was
Well,
on Trevor Rabin's 90124, and
well,
it's a bit more like the finished version than I remember, but
I
it
heard
still
it
has some rocky
differently than
bits.
what you think I heard. I heard it before there was John. I heard it while they were working on it
Oh, okay.
back then. And I heard it because Carl from my band Assault. Carl's guitar player's roadie was working with Trevor Rabin, and he had a cassette run from the studio. And I remember at a gig before we played and stuff's getting set up, he said, "Hey, you got to hear this. This is Trevor Rabin, who's working with the guys from." It was like that kind of conversation. He had a portable cassette player, and he played it, and that's when I heard it first. But then I heard a version later that was probably the more produced and more finished demo that you're referring to, which I also heard at that time. Hi, Sasha, come on in.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
And
did my answer your question though?
yeah, you answered it. Another reason that they wanted to change the name was apparently there were a couple other bands called Cinema, but I do wonder how big of a fight would they have put up for the name? Like, I don't know how big these other bands were.
Well, they're not big enough for us to have known about them, so.
Right. And I do think the Yes name, like, Trevor Horn mentions that he was pushing for them to be Yes again, but I think Atlantic as well wanted the name resurrected because Yes was one of their crown jewels,
Yeah.
and it's like people know the name, so like why not use it?
Well, the other business decision there is it's less of a backstory and more of a reason for new fans to dig into that back catalog, and then everyone's making money again.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was a different name, it'd be like, oh, so that guy is in this, see this album, that guy's in this other band. Yes, you should check them out. It's different. It instantly connected all that.
Yeah. But conversely, Asia was able to make it work, new name, but familiar musicians,
No, they went with the name Asia after they started out with the name Asia.
No, yeah, I'm saying.
I'm teasing. I know what you mean. No, but that's a great point. Yeah, because none of them were all in another band at the same time. They were.
Yeah, well, except Steve and Jeff for
different
drama.
members.
Yeah,
Steve and Jeff, and yeah.
Also, the bit where Trevor Horn, basically, it seemed like nobody wanted to go and talk to John to bring him in. It was kind of surprising.
Oh, yeah.
And Trevor ended up being the one to go and talk to John. And I kind of wonder,
that must have been weird.
Yeah, like I wonder like when this happens in relation to the story I've heard of Chris playing the demos to John, but it's very interesting. You see the like pushback between Trevor Horn and John Anderson, and also the whole thing of Trevor Horn not wanting Tony Kaye for a certain session because he heard Trevor Rabin playing keyboards.
Yeah.
And he makes a point of saying something to the effect of, mind you, I didn't want Tony out of the band, just out of that session.
Right.
But that rubbed Tony the wrong way. And then, of course, we all know they got Eddie Jobson and then got Tony back. So the rest there was history.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else about 90125 before I bring up this
going
other
back
thing?
to what you said about the Trevor and John conversation, I want to know, how did that come about? Did Trevor call him up and say, hey, I want to come talk to you? Like, how did that come up, and where did they meet, and how did that conversation, what I want more of that story.
Yeah. Yeah. And after, well, Trevor Horn, I think, says that Owner of a Lonely Heart, in his opinion, is the best song on 90125. And, as a little kid, it was my favorite Yes song, but over time, it's kind of become my least favorite on 90125, funny enough.
Because you're more, it's all subjective, and you've become more of a prog head. That's why.
Yeah.
I think their biggest mistake is not using him for the next album for the same lineup of players. That is just and big.
Oh, well, Big Generator?
Yeah.
Yeah, like he mentions that he was briefly involved with Big Generator, and then he says, and we all know what happened there, but he doesn't cover that period, and I'm saying here, like, well, tell us more about that, please.
Yeah.
Like, at least Like I understand not devoting a chapter to it because he didn't craft a hit song for that album. Like if he had an integral role in, say, Rhythm of Love, for example, then yeah, maybe he would have had a chapter on that. But since he was involved briefly and didn't see it through, I would have liked at least maybe a paragraph about
Yeah, but I don't
the
know.
thing.
I don't know the detail of how much he was involved or he didn't, why he wasn't the guy for that album. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I think there were some arguments within, maybe within the band and with him, and I know
That's my
I figure
least favorite album as far as production.
mm,
There's a lot
yeah,
of music on there I really like, but it just sounds like it's being played on a Jack in the Box drive-through speaker in a cardboard box. I hate the production of that album.
yeah, it does make me wonder, like, what if he had been fully involved and there wasn't all this messiness of, oh, let's record in all these different places
Right.
and people not showing up uh, when they should, or maybe like there are a bunch of different stories, but it does make you wonder, like, what would that Trevor Horn produced Big Generator have sounded like, you know?
Yeah. I'd love for him to remix it and master it.
Yeah, if it were at all possible.
That would be
um
cool.
Yeah, I see this comment from Dave Walkinson. The English audience had not heard a strained vocal for the first decade of Yes gigs, and with Yes being an English band, it just wasn't going to work. Poor Trevor. However, he had the guts to do it, and they produced a great album. The thing is, though, it's a good thing it didn't last because of what he did for Yes with 90125. He can be hugely proud of his work, and he is a real Yes legend. Cinema needed John. Atlantic thought so. I thought so. And it's not a fail, it's just the natural progression. The other cinema bands were going to make life difficult, as band called Ice, I believed.
Hmm.
As John D and I left cinema rehearsals, Atlantic executives were due in the next hour or so. Cinema was a success, of course, as an award winning track. Yeah, I remember Dave detailing that rehearsal stuff in Yes in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Um,
Dave.
yeah.
Interesting.
Um, yeah.
I
I'm trying
love the
to.
song Cinema. It's the opening track of our theme music for this show. I love that song. It's one of those things I at least wish it was longer. You know, it's a great intro song, but I would love for that song to be more of the jam part of it. We've heard the longer version that happens before the drum roll comes in, but I'd love for that to just keep going. Just
Oh
love
yeah,
that song.
like on the talk tour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just scoring through my notes, seeing if there's anything else Yes related. Um, I guess one of the things I guess it shows me is how the relationships with Yes members can change over time. I mean, I guess Alan wasn't so sure about John coming back, but later on he'd be the best man at John's wedding with
Yeah.
Jane, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I wonder
so,
what the reason was.
yeah.
Dependability, or I wonder what.
Or maybe he wanted cinema to stand on its own. Like, that
Maybe.
could be a reason.
Yeah.
Also, with the Prince's Trust 2004 concert, you know, you had that lineup of Trevor Rabin, Steve Howe, Jeff Downs, Alan White, and Chris Squire. And that is such a unique lineup just for that one concert to play Cinema and Owner of Lonely Heart. I'm surprised that Trevor Horn didn't sort of elaborate a bit on how strange that
And
was.
how that came about as far as the members, and what was rehearsal like, or did they even rehearse, or, you know.
Right. But I like how basically it felt like the plane landed very well with how he details the rest of that concert. He's basically praising the artists who were there, who they did so well, and how it all came together in the
Yeah.
end.
Neat stuff. All kinds of, excuse me, I get up at 4 in the morning, folks. Um, the Frankie Goes to Hollywood stuff was gripping as well. There's just a lot of business stuff, production stuff, relationship stuff, being in bands, every aspect of working with artists as artists or producer or manager is in this book, and it's extremely fulfilling is the word that I'll use. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that could act as a gateway to all sorts of artists.
Yeah.
And again, can't stress enough how big of a role his wife Jill Sinclair played in all this. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's very well written. And like we said, there were bits where we kind of wish he'd elaborated a bit more, but overall, it's just such a gripping narrative. Like it's something that every music fan should read, in my opinion.
Definitely. Cool.
So yeah, so as far as Trevor Horn now, I remember a few months ago we heard he might be working on a solo album. So I guess we'd eventually cover that on our first album since joining Yes series. And of course,
Right.
Oliver Wakeman has one coming out
I think
as well.
Trevor's would be the largest time gap, of course.
He may, well, I guess it depends on like when you're, because Tony Kaye's solo album came out like quite a while after he
Oh, that's
first
true.
joined Yes. But this would maybe be the biggest gap between leaving Yes and recording a
Yeah,
solo
it'd be
album. So I guess
43 years.
yeah, so I guess it depends on where you put the markers in the
Yeah.
timeline. And as far as other books, like we said before, we have Yes, the Tormato story by Kevin Mulrine. So
Mhm.
we'll cover that at some point. I kind of wonder if maybe we should have that and a discussion with Kevin and maybe a review of the Tormato album itself as one thing, and maybe in
That'd be
September
cool.
for its
That would be
anniversary.
cool.
So we'll reach out and see what we can work
Yeah.
out. There are a couple other books. One of our listeners, Carl, told me about Rick Wakeman in the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is from Sonic Bond Publishing, who also put out Yes in the 1980s, and Yes in the 1990s. I think is also coming out like end of September. So maybe we'll move on to that one sometime after the Tormato one, and maybe consider the Rick Wakeman one at some point. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are plenty of books to consider. So yeah, and in the meantime, here on Yesshift, we have an interview with Dave Cousins next Saturday, July 22nd at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, and 8 p.m. UK time. Dave Cousins, of course,
From the Straubs.
Straubs, leader, singer. You can bet I'm gonna be going through the Straubs discography in the lead up to this. And yeah, well, we have other stuff in the works, and so be sure to follow us at facebook.com/yesshift, where we'll post about things and also curate things. You can also find our videos at youtube.com/@yesshift, and go to anchor.fm/yesshift if you'd like to support us. So there's a donate button, and you can also see the other podcast platforms that we're on if you want audio only.
Yep.
And email us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com, suggestions, feedback, all that kind of stuff. And do you have anything else to add, Dad?
Not other than I can't believe this was episode 107, not counting a couple dozen news desk reports. But episode 107, the other day, we just crossed our 2-year anniversary, as Steve mentioned at the top of the show, and just blows my mind. But Trevor, thank you so much for all the great music. Thank you for such a great book. We look forward to having you on. We'll reach out again. And we got other things in the works, folks, as well. And Steve gave you the rundown for what's on the horizon for the next couple weeks or so.
Yeah, definitely. Get the book.
Get it. Right. Just get it. It's really good. We should talk about it. You want to talk about? What was your favorite part? Thanks, everybody.